Morning, dear learners. Welcome to teaching learning session of sociology. In today's lecture, we'll discuss another case of ethnography by Margaret Mead, that is coming of age in Samoa. This case has been discussed by the Margaret Mead, right? Coming of age in Samoa, a psychological study of primitive youth for Western civilization by Margaret Mead has a significant impact in the readings of ethnographies. It is one of the most important cases of ethnographies. In contemporary times, coming of age in Samoa remains an influential and pioneering work that has generated interest among scholars with regard to the ethnographic enterprise and has also given rise to several controversies and debates over Mead's technique of data collection and validity of her arguments. So this is one of the interesting cases of ethnographics because of reasons like it is because it has given rise to several controversies, right? And it was an influential and the pioneering work that has generated interest among the ethnographers. It is this work is associated with several controversies and debates about the technique of media collection adopted by the Mead and the validity for her arguments. What she said, what all valid reasons she has given for her arguments, right? Margaret Mead traveled to South Pacific Polynesian island of America, Samoa, in 1925 to study the lives of adolescent Samoans and understand if adolescence was universally similar in terms of trauma and stress that had been an identifying characteristic of this phase of personality development. So this is a case of psychology, right? And Mead traveled to the South Pacific Polynesian island, right, of America. He traveled Samoa. Samoa is island of America, right? And South Pacific Polynesian island of America. And this study is carried out in 1925. What was the purpose objective of this study? The objective of this study was that the researcher wanted to know whether there is any similar pattern or this is universal pattern among the adolescents about the stress. Is there any universal or the similar whether the adolescent follows the similar type of a pattern, right? That is at the time of trauma or the stress, right? What is the conditions of adolescent, right, at the time of trauma and stress, whether there is any similarity, is there any universal pattern, or it varies from place to place or culture to culture, right? Mead has also an additional objective of finding whether the turmoil experienced by individual during the period of adolescence was biologically determined or it was culturally cultivated by the community. So the objective was researcher wanted to know whether there is any universal pattern of stress and trauma among the adolescent, or the second objective was that the turmoil experienced by the adolescent during the period of stress, right, was biologically determined, it was biological, or it was because of the culture. Coming of age in Samoa was published in 1920 as Margaret Mead's doctoral dissertation. Background of this ethnographic research in American Samoa. At the time of Mead's research, America was under the grip of World War One, which had affected the families by displacing them and leading to their breakdown in some cases, right? So you can understand the situation of that time, that everyone was under stress, right? And that America was under the grip of World War One, and it has affected the families, right? Families were under stress, they were displaced, and this in some cases the families were broken down. As an emerging discipline, anthropology was engaged in ongoing debate about nature versus nurture with regard to the behavior trait of individual and the importance of biological predisposition. So, among apart from this, a debate was going on about the nature versus nurture with regard to the behavior traits of the individual, whether it's because of the nature or whether because it is because of the nurturing, right? The discourses primarily focused on the contestation between biology and cultural in shaping human personality. So at that time, that everyone was there was a debate that the personality what the personality depends on the biology or because of the culture, so which plays an important role in development of personality, whether it's the biology which plays an important role in development of personality, or it is the culture which plays an important role in development of personality, right? Consequently, the debate has significant impact on contemporary social problem in World War One affected America, right? And there were certain because America was under the grip of World War One, and there was a significant impact of contemporary social problem at that time, right? So it was the apt time to for this study. This was also a time when the theories of psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud were gaining popularity among these scholars. Freud had proposed the existence of Oedipus complex among adolescent boys to explain their relationship with their parents and the general trend of gender socialization for both girls and boys. Right? It was the time when the psychoanalyst theories of Sigmund Freud were gaining popularity among the scholars. We know that Sigmund Freud is an Australian psychologist and he has given the theories of personality development. Right? So it was because these theories were gaining popularity, and it was the time when the debate uh, a debate was going on whether the culture or biology, which one is responsible for the development of the personality. The dislocation of families caused immense trauma to the people. Around 1920s, there were rising concern about teenagers being in regular conflict with their parents, right? So at that time the conditions were totally different, right? Because of the World War One, right? The families were in immense trauma, right? And many they were in families were in trauma, and many families were broken down, right? Around 1920s there was a rising concern about the teenager because of their conflicts with their parents, right? Scholars began questioning the parenting style and practices of bringing up the children in communities around the world in order to understand how parents overcome the trauma of adolescence faced by their children. So a debate was going on about the nurture and the nature, and the scholar began to questioning about the parenting style, right? When the Mead left for American Samoa, her mentor, Franz Bios, instructed her to examine the psychological attitude of an individual under the pressure of journal pattern of culture, and compared the attitude of someone adolescent women with that of American adolescent in terms of rebellious spirit that was often witnessed by the parents in America. So Franz Boas was the instructor or the mentor of the Mead. Franz Boas is known as the father of anthropology, right? So Franz Boas was the mentor of Mead, and he had given him he had given the objective to the Mead that to test the psychological attitude of an individual under the pressure of general pattern of culture. What is the to understand what that is to understand the role of a culture in the role of a culture which for psychological attitudes, what a culture plays, to understand whether a culture or what type of a role a culture plays for personality development or in personality development. And the second objective was to compare the attitude of sanguine adolescent women, especially women, with that of American adolescent women about in terms of the rebellious spirit, because American adolescent women were often were more rebellious, right? Margaret Mead was of the opinion that all the studies that focused on the adolescent behavior had been conducted by the psychologists who did not document the natural surroundings and the social phenomenon like anthropologists would, as they had tendency to focus on the ideal lab condition while testing their theories. So Mead was a psychologist, and according to Mead, right, Mead was of the opinion that all these studies which were focused on the adolescent behavior were conducted under the lab conditions, right? These all theories were conducted under the lab condition rather than rather than their surrounding and social phenomenon. So it is important to, if you really want to enter the psychological condition of an individual, it is important, according to me, it is important to study their behavior, to study their psychology under the natural surroundings and the social phenomena rather than conducting these studies in the lab conditions, right? So Margaret Mead opined that an anthropological assessment of adolescent behavior utilizing ethnographic technique was needed. So Mead was of the opinion that it is important to conduct this psychological test under using ethnographic technique. Ethnographic technique, there are certain principle of ethnographic technique. The first principle of ethnography is to conduct the research under that natural surroundings, right? So according to Margaret Mead, it is important to understand the adolescent behavior utilizing the ethnographic technique. Coming of age in Samoa, in seminal text of ethnographical study, because it marks the beginning of paradigmatic shift from strictly quantitative data collection technique to qualitative assessment without loss of empiricism. So before that, the research was psychological researches were based on the quantitative data. She shifted from quantitative to the qualitative data without losing the empirical nature, right? Key issues in coming of age in Samba. Based on her research in Samba, Margaret Mead published two books, Coming of Age in Samba, a psychological study of primitive youth for Western civilization. Right? So she published two books on the basis of her study. The first book is Coming Ages in Samba, right? A psychological study of primitive youth for Western civilization, and more serious ethnographic account of Samba was published as a social organization of Manwas in 1930 by Bishop Museum Press. Mead spent close to 9 years in Sangha, during which she studied 68 girls in several villages of island communities. Right, so she was in Sangha for 9 months. And the sample size for her study was 68 girls of different villages of island communities. She reported that unlike an American teenager, Samoan adolescent girl did not experience turmoil and angst of teenage years and were capable of sexual adjustment. So she found that there were the differences among the Samoan adolescent girl and the American adolescent girl, and as per her research, that Samoan adolescent girl did not experience turmoil as the American adolescent girl, right? And they were capable of sexual, that the Samoan girls were capable of sexual adjustment. The transition from adolescent to adulthood was not marked with a period of stress or trauma. So she observed that the transmission, that is the when a girls transit from adolescent to adulthood stage, there was no mark of stress or trauma, right? Adulthood, that there was there is no mark of that is there was less stress or no stress at all when a girl's transit from adulthood to from adolescent to adulthood. Adult someone were pleasing them, devoid of aggression, violence in their emotions. Right? Mead concluded that the behavior of American teenager was culturally specific and did not have any psychological basis to it. So, as per Mead, that the behavior of American teenager was culturally specific. It is because of the culture and didn't have any psychological basis to it. So, as per Mead, that the culture plays an important role. It is not because of the biology, right? It is because of the culture which impacts the behavior of adolescent. She also believed that some girl didn't face the trauma of making difficult social choices in terms of the peer group and partner owing to homogeneous nature of the society. So she felt that there were the girls of the summer, these girls of summer were not that stressed, were not stressed, and they were capable enough. The girls of the summer were capable enough to make a difficult choices, to take the difficult decision in terms of the peer group or the partners, because of the homogeneous nature of the society. The society is not heterogeneous, it is the homogeneous type of the society, and the girls of the Salmon island were not that stressed as of the American girls, adolescent girls, and as per me, it is because of the culture, not because of the biology. She urged American educationists to focus on a system of education that prepared the American adolescent population to make right choices in the heterogeneous society. Right. So she suggested that that some changes are required in the education system, and that the educationists should focus on the education that should prepare the American adolescent population to make the right choices in the heterogeneous society. Mead found the period of transition among the someone extremely comfortable, as it was free from the struck and dang of the teen years in the Western societies. So, as per Mead, that the period of transition from adolescent to adulthood is extremely comfortable in Samoa, right? Rather than and America. The Samoan youth were recognized for their economic and domestic role only when they attained age of 15 or 16 years. In order to explain it further, Mead exemplified the lack of strict parental control among the Samoan, especially with respect to the sexual behavior of the youth. Right. So, what Mead observed that there was a lack of parental control among the Samoans. Right, there was a control of parents, but there was no strict control of Samoans, because, especially with respect to the sexual behavior of youth was the freedom was given to youth to make their own choices, right, and that the youth were recognized for their economic and domestic roles only when they attain age of 15 or 16. As opposed to this liberal style of parenting, the American youth had undergo a strict regulation set up by the parents, which was responsible for conflict between the parents and children. So, as per me, the reasons for the conflict between the parents or the children, or the rebellious behavior of the children, is because of those strict regulations set by the parents, or the parental control over children. Why? What she observed, that among the someone there was no strict parental control on the youth, but in American society there was the strict regulations set by the parents, or there was a strict parental control. There was a strict parental control on the youth, which was responsible for the conflict between the parents and adolescent. Theoretical perspectives in reading coming age in Somva, the text popularized the method of participant observation while conducting the anthropological fieldwork. The ethnographic method employed by Margaret Mead included the dialogues and the discussions with her informants, which was significant departure from strict scientific outlook of researcher at that time, right? So as we know that in ethnography, right, it is important that one should observation is one of the important methods, and one should be the part of that community. And she adopted all the principles, and she adopted the ethnographic method. And in ethnographic method, that she discussed the problems, or she discussed the topic about the she discussed the topic with the informants or with the participants. And it was a this method was a significant departure from the scientific outlook of that time, that one should not be a part of. According at that time, it was the objective, it was considered that for the objective, for the if you want to generalize the thing, or if the researcher should not be part of that. But Mead discussed the issues with the observant, and she opted the ethnographical method. Instead of opting for the longitudinal study, Margaret Mead favored a more cross-sectional approach on the paucity of time and resources. She interacted with the girls of different age group in order to understand their viewpoint and their behavior in someone's society. So she selected her sample size, that she interacted with the sample size was the 68 girls, and she selected the girls of the different age groups, so she could get an idea about their worldview and their behavior in the someone's society. Mead intended to argue that cause of adolescent trauma could be solely found in social environment of the youth, and the genetics plays a limited role or no role in determining the discord they felt during those years. So, as per Mead, it is because of the culture, or culture is responsible for the stress, trauma, or rebellious behavior rather than the genetics plays a limited role or no role at all, right? Mead's observation yielded support for her cultural deterministic notion that she went to theorize about the cultural personality interrelationship. Mead notes that someone background which makes growing up so easy, so simple a matter is the general casualness of the whole society. For Samoa is a place where no one pays a very high stakes, no one pays very high prices, no one suffers for the conventions or the fights to death for special ends. So, as per Mead, it is because of the society, it is because of the culture which is responsible for stress or trauma among the individual, right? And for me, according to Mead, that the growing up in the someone society was very simple, was very easy, right? This agreement between the parent and child was settled by the child's moving across the street, between the man and his village by the man's removal from the next village, and between husband and his wife's seducer by few fine mats, right? So she observed all these things. In this casual attitude towards life, in this avoidance of conflict, Samoa contrasts strongly not only with the America but also with most primitive civilization. So what Mead observed that there were the society was the Samoan society is simple type of the society, right? They resolve their conflicts very easily. So because of this casual attitude of Samuel, there was less conflicts, right, among the members of the society, which is opposite to, or which is with contrast to the American society or the most primitive civilizations, right? Much we may deplore such attitude and feel that important personalities and great art are not born in shallow society, right? So, this was a comparative analysis of someone's society by Margaret Mead vis-a-vis American society. And despite of the comparative nature of research, Mead still managed to remain cultural relativist, right? That is, Cultural relativism is ability to understand a culture on its own term and not to make judgment using standards of one own culture. Right. So she tried to she used a comparative analysis, right, of Samoan society with American society. But despite of the comparative nature of the study, despite of the comparative nature of the research, Mead managed to remain the relativist. Cultural relativism means to understand someone's culture right in its own term, not by not making the judgment using the standards of one own culture. Right. So, despite of the comparative nature of the study, she remained the cultural relativist. She was of the opinion that American society needed to overcome the feeling of cultural superiority over other communities. Right. Mead is acknowledged for strengthening the idea of cultural relativism in discipline fraught with comparative study as a result of deeply embedded ethnocentrism among the practitioners of not just the science but social science, owing to the evolutionary outlook towards the society. So she used the ethnographic method, right? Her study is based on the that is the comparative method, but but although her studies was based on the comparative method, but she somehow remained that remained a cultural, she managed to remain the cultural relativist, right? According to Newman, Margaret Mead is also significant in shaping the discourse on race in Western white liberal feminism. Newman considered Mead as an instrumental scholar who challenged the Victorian notion of sexual restraint among civilized white women and black men's bestiality in order to discourage any alliance between the two, and thus making Margaret Mead an anti-racist as an opponent of an ethnocentrism. So, as per Newman, that Margaret Mead is significant in shaping a discourse on the race in Western white liberal feminism, all right, and that Margaret Mead, Margaret Mead is according to Newman, that Margaret Mead is anti-racist, right, as an opponent of ethnocentrism. Okay. Despite a such significant contribution to the academic discourse in anthropology and other associated disciplines, Margaret Mead's research of somewhat percent has been brought under scrutiny. Right, one of the most frequent remarks being her tendency to romanticize with the someone's. Right, she was criticized because of her tendency to romanticize with someone's. Mead had been criticized for her ahistorical approach, that is, a systematic overlooking of context in which someone adolescent girl behaved the way they did. It seemed preposterous to many scholars that the absence of sound methodological framework, several anthropologists and sociologists that followed her research have questioned the validity and reliability of data she collected and techniques employed by her doing so. So, although she contributed a lot to the academics, but her study was under scrutiny because of many of the reasons. The one reason was about the reliability of the data, about the validity of the data. The another reason was because of the sound methodological framework, and the third reason was because of her ahistorical approach. The constant and regular debates surrounding the Margaret Mead's research have instigated an academic discourse on the subject of ethnographic technique, reflexive methodology in ethnography, observer bias, and feminist discourses, and so on. And so it has given rise to discourses, many debates like on the subjects like ethnographic techniques, reflexive methodology, observation bias, or feminist discourses, and so on. Right? Durgar agrees that Mead had a political and theoretical agenda guiding her research, and in drawing the conclusion following her research and comparing it with that of the American lifestyle. Mead fulfilled are motives for of sexual freedom and the liberal values. In many ways, this progressive outlook of Margaret Mead challenged the morality of the American society and made her findings seem slightly controversial and ahead of time despite of the diverse and the broad readership of the text. So, Mead contributed a lot, right? The progressive outlook of the Mead challenged the morality of the American society, right? And made her findings seem slightly controversial because she challenged the morality of the American society and ahead of the time. Her research was ahead of the time, and despite of the diverse and broad readership of the text, right? So this was one of the cases, right, of ethnographic by Mead, right? Another case which we'll discuss today is Mokover women, gender, hegemony, and capitalist transformation in South Indian fishing community by Kalpana Ram. Right? Kalpana Ram discussed a case of Indian fishing, of South Indian fishing community. Right? Ethnographies are very interesting window to study of society, being intensely descriptive and explanatory. Ethnographies tend to create the world seen by researcher just like that to the reader. The work by Kalpana Rai does just this. This work is very important. This is very interesting case, right? The work of Mukawar Women by Kalpana Ram is to write of difference. On reading the ethnographic study, this become quite apparent as the Mukawar community and the existence of women within the community is marked by several differences from the common parallels. So, this case um, right, it is a case that the that discuss the Mukavar community and the existence of women within that community, and it is marked with the several differences from the common parallels. What are the differences uh, between this community and the existence of women within this community from other community or from other societies? The ethnographer stayed in the coastal village with the social worker and studied the place for over 18 months to gain familiarity about place and people. Right? As an ethnographer, that Kalpana Ram stayed with the population under study. That is, she stayed in coastal village with a social worker for 18 years so that researcher could get a familiarity about place and people. It is through the house to house survey that the researcher collected the information like age, educational qualification, size of the families, the residential frame, the marital alliance, and the health conditions, etc. Right? So that researcher collected the data from house to house survey. This survey then become a way of entering into fruitful conversation and dialogues with the Mukkavan men and the women over a period of time. Right? Let us understand the Mukkavan society. This community caste settlement is more than a simple geographical phenomenon. With endogamous system of marriage, migration trips for work are common here, and the migration occur also because of pilgrimage purpose. Right? So caste settlement is important in this society, right? And they follow the endogamous system of the marriage. Right, we discussed about the exogamous and the endogamous system. They follow the endogamous system of the marriage, and because of this marriage, the other reason for the migrations could be work as well as pilgrimage, right? the entire metric of culture and problems associated with it somewhere become the exclusive domain of the upper class only, right? So one of the most interesting factor about the division of labor that the researcher point out is the bearing of utilization of resources of ocean by women. They could do so only through the men, right? And in fact, they may not practice the most lucrative occupation that defines the community, fishing. So, Mukavar society, Mukavar community was the Mukavar community follows that endogamous system of marriages, and the reasons for migrations of this society were marriage, right? Then migration for the purpose of work or job, and because of the pilgrimage, right? And then what researcher observed that there was a division of labor, and division of labor that is division of labor was because of division of labor there was barring of utilization of resources of the ocean by women, means that women were not supposed to use the resources of ocean, means they cannot go for fishing, right? And they can use the resources of ocean only through men, right? Right, in fact they may not practice the most lucrative occupation that defines the community, the fishing, right? So women were not supposed to do fishing, right? They can use the resources of ocean only through men, right? The women within the Makava community are restricted to the domestic domain largely. Even when out, they maintain their physical distance from the men, right? So that women were restricted to the domestic domain only, and even when they are out, it is required that they should maintain a distance from the men. This entire distancing and freedom is indirectly planned as it differs with the age and the marital status of the women. And even then, at this distance or this freedom depends on many factors like the age, factors like the marital status of the women, right? So there are the rules that they should maintain a distance from the women, and that is on the basis of their age, on the basis of their marital status, right? While the younger women who are unmarried faces much stricter surveillance, the women over 40 widows enjoy much freedom of movement, right? So the younger women were under much strict surveillance, right? While women over 40 or the who are widow, they enjoy the freedom of movement. The public venues are all openly and easily accessible to men. This is in sharp contrast to the women who rarely access to the public spaces around, right? So there was a restriction to the women to access the public spaces, while men can openly and easily access to the public places. Their movement outside is marked only by work. For entertainment and other purposes, they may sit at the porch of their homes or the sand lanes outside the houses. Right? The distancing from the sea become a significant reason for lack of cultural capital among women. Right? So that the women were not supposed to access the public spaces openly, right? For the entertainment, that they cannot go outside, they should not go outside, and if they want to go outside, that should be only marked with the work. They should go outside only because of the work, and for the entertainment purpose and for the other purposes, women can sit at the porch of their houses or the lane outside their houses, and they were not supposed to go anywhere else, or to access, they were not supposed to access the public venues like that. Women and the existence of sacred. According to the popular belief, here women were also regarded as dangerous to men. The danger they may cause again depends on the age and the social position that they have in the society. The supernatural frame relegate women as being threat to man's pursuit of their labor, mainly fishing activities. It is considered that women crossing the man's path going to work turns the sea as a rough and crazy. So there were many beliefs, like there was a belief that women that they considered as per one of the beliefs, this community consider the women dangerous to the men, right? And this again, this danger may change as per the age and the social position of the women in this society, right? And it was a belief that that if a woman crosses a man's path going to work, turns the sea as rough and crazy, right? So see the condition of women in that community. Any wrongful or incorrect conduct by women become a reason for any kind of turbulence faced by the men at the sphere, and especially for the safety and upkeep, right? So if any kind of the conduct, any wrongful or incorrect conduct by women, they consider it as a reason for the turbulence faced by the men. Within the Makar Catholicism, the female principle dominates both the good and the evil side. The figure of Mary exists on the good side, while the evil is the Hindi goddesses Isakai and her companions. So they consider that the female principle dominates both the good and the evil side. Mother Mary, right, exists at the good side of the women, while the Hindi goddesses Isakai and her companions were considered as a bad side, right? There were the stages of women's life in this community. There are ways in which female body changes and is supposed to be kept with age. For instance, in case of hair may be kept short for the young girls. As the age grows, the hair must be oiled and plaited. After puberty, especially after marriage, the hair must be tightly made into bun. So, see how the hair will do. What will do with their hair? It was defined, right? For the younger girls, it was required that they should keep their hair short, right? As the age grows, the hair must be oiled and plaited, and after puberty, or especially after marriage, the hair must be tightly made into a bun. The hair are left open only after bath, when they should be dried. Other than bath, if the hair are left open, they signify birth and disorder. This may symbolize the grief that comes into with widowhood and kind of anger or sexual passion. The gender coding of space, which less politely comes down to the restriction on female use of the space, now emerges as a part and parcel of more general concern with containing women through the regulation of the maternity of their bodies. So women were under much restrictions. The Hindu value system explicitly show cause menstruation rights. With the Tamilian society, the first menstruations is considered to be auspicious and is celebrated. This is much significant to the Makkavar female. In Tamilian society, it is all to the menstruation stages that are marked by the rituals, while the first one is about celebration and other represent sculptions. It also carries out major fear that overtones of pollution, absence from the public worship, debarring from domestic cookings, and so on. Such practices that involve sculpture are absent from the Makava society. It is among the Makava's women go out for the work, attend the church services, and carry on the regular lives during this period also. Though here two differences occur, some Makavas do follow the measures of the Tamil Indian society and aim of looking equivalent to them, right? So in Tamilian society, right, there were certain restrictions, right, during the menstruations period. They celebrate the first period, right, and why the Macabre society differs from this, right? There were no restriction, right, to the women during this period. Why? Again, there was a division, right, among the society, among the communities. Few follows the Tamilian rules, while other don't, right? Okay. The Makava devalue the entire caste and This is what can explain their devaluation towards the norm of pollution and purity that exists in other castes. Within the lower caste community, like Mokawat themselves, the women become symbolically similar to untouchable with this Sanskritic paradigm, right? Such implication of interrelation between women and untouchable is discussed by the Kerrigan, right? So, see, Makabar devalue the entire caste. They devalue the entire caste because they belong to the acquired caste. That is why they explain their devaluation towards the norms of pollution and purity that exist in the other caste, right? Within the lower caste communities, like Makabar themselves, the women become symbolically similar to untouchable, right? The women in this become symbolically similar to untouchable, right? And such implication of interrelation between women and untouchable was discussed by the Kargar. According to him, the Brahminic Upnayan rites of initiation for boys is restricted to twice born upper caste. There is no initiation rites for the girls either. Only twin born caste can study the Veda. Women similarly are not allowed to read the Vedas or worship the deity with Vedic mantras. We all know this thing, right? The Sanskriti feminine view seems to be impressive with Makavar, but non-Sanskritic view also has subterranean existence only. Domestic unit as a setup towards the power, according to Levi Strauss, women become a mean of exchange between the group and as that are opposed yet complementary. So, as per Levi Strauss, the women became the means of exchange between the group. Right, they exchanged the women between the group. There was a tradition of exchange between the group. This extended with the Mokover, as here the women form the central nucleus of male kins as vital link in set of interlocking kin. Girl's fertility is not only the importance to the family of her cross cousins, but also secures her own position with her own natal family, right? So that is that fertility matters a lot, right? The marriage among the Mukawa take place between the daughter and the sons who are within the same village or at least nearby village. That turns the life women into highly consolidated one between her marital and the natal household. The feminine construction of power in Macabre society is a way power is played by confinement to women. On one hand, while they do not have economic resources and access to the public spaces, on the other hand, they deprive their power over men from their exclusion and confinement to the domestic space. Right? They were not that the women don't have any economic resources and access to public spaces, right? While they drive their power over men from this exclusion and confinement to the domestic places, they were confined to the domestic places. There is an enormous amount of psychic and mysterious power that are endowed over when by the men. Women become powerful in terms of innumerable responsibilities they uphold, right? They become powerful because of their responsibilities, because of the many of the responsibilities the women uphold. The women here are considered to be supreme entity who also act as connection between the different generation, between different household as a source of continuity. So, because they hold the power, because the women are considered as the supreme entity who act as a connection between the different generations. She is supposed to connect different generations, different households, right, as a source of continuity. In fact, marriages of daughter are arranged in close vicinity by coastal people so that they can be supporters for their life, especially in case where the sons are not very dutiful. So, right, because they are considered as a uh, connection between the different generations, right? The importance of female position become even more stressed due to the sexual division of labor in fishing society, right? That it becomes so the position of the female becomes stressed because of their sexual division of labor. There was a division of labor on the basis of the sex, right? In fishing society, women become a practitioner of land-based activities taking place in the Mukavar community. There was a division of labor, right? It is required that there should be division of labor for social order, and there is a division of labor, and women were supposed to take the land-based, or take to participate in the land-based activities, right? The management and expenditure of cash as well as entire parallel economy based on the credit function is run by the women, right? This is important for recover as it helps in balancing out the fluctuation that keeps occurring in the male dominated economic setup. So management and the expenditure of cash was done by the females, right, while other financial aspects were in the hand of the males. The women here, along with the economic power, uphold the function of nurturing and taking care of the health, maintenance, and reproduction of the domestic unit. Their attempts and persistent efforts in maintaining the unit, contacting healers, arranging marital alliance, led them to move all around the coastal belt and also reach to the interiors of the district. Right. So today we discussed about two cases of ethnography. The first case we discussed today was about the coming ages in Samoa by the Margaret Mead. Right, this is one of the most important type of a case of ethnography. Right, in this is a psychological study of this case is a psychological study of the primitive youth of Western civilization. The Margaret Mead tried to compare the stress and the traumatic conditions of this Samoan adolescent girl with that of the American adolescent girl. The objective of her study was to find out whether this stress, the reason for the stress or trauma is because of genetics or because of the culture. Right? She spent around 9 months, right, with someone's, right, and according to her findings, what she found is that the adolescent girls were not someone adolescent girl were not stressed, right, that the transition of adolescent that the transition of the girls from adolescent to adulthood is quite stress free among the someone girls, while this transition is very stressful in American society. So, as per her studies, right, as per her research, it is because of the culture and one of the reason for this stress-free environment among the someone's is because of less parental control. While in American society there are much parental control, and this parental control is one of the reason for the rebellious behavior of American adolescent, right, and the total sample size which she has taken is around 68 girls. She studied about the 68 girls of the society of that someone of various ages, right. This is the Franz Boas was her mentor, and she adopted the ethnographic method of studies, right? And this is one of the most pioneering cases, right? Although her study was under controversies because of the many of the reasons, because of the observation method she has adopted, which was not very popular at that time, right? Because of her other ethnographical methodology, right, and because of many other reasons, right. So, as per this study, that culture is a reason for stress and trauma. It is not genetic or it is not biological. The other study today where we discussed about the Makova society by the Kalpana Rai. She tried to understand that society and that to try to understand that society and the status of women in that society. She spent around 19 years with that community, right? Macabre is one of the very important communities of the South Indian, right? What she observed that in this society, males are dominating, right, while females are dominated by the males, right? And she wanted to, and as per this, she tried to the life, she framed out the life of the Macabre society, the relative position of women in this society, right? That the women were under, as per this research or as per this case, the women of the Macabre society were under much restrictions. They were not supposed to access the public places, right? There were restrictions, there were rules, what the women can do, right? They cannot can do, and what they should not do, right? The roles and duties were divided, right? And there were the well defined roles and duties of the women, right? They were financially dependent on the males. The women were not supposed to access the resources of the ocean. They can access the resources of oceans through the males only, right? That the women were associated with the ill omens, right? Or there were certain beliefs related to the women. What if something bad happens to the men, then it was considered that it was because of that women, or if something good happens, then again it was because of the women, right? The women's position was not very good. They were in this society, the women's were dominated by males, right? And this is another important case of ethnography. So today we discuss the two important cases of ethnographic studies. In our next lecture, we'll discuss about another case. Namaskar.